Hi, I'm Dr. Philip T. Garden. I'm an adjunct professor here at Tallahassee Community College. Today we're going to go over the models of the human reproductive system. All right, first we're going to look at the male model that we have here, and we start with the testes of the male, and it's located down here. Now this would be the testes, this would be the epididymis, and the sac that holds the testes is called the scrotum. Okay, and then we have the penis, and this particular penis the prepuce has been removed, which would be covering the head of the penis. So this would be called a circumcised penis. Okay. Now, as sperm are formed in the testes, they go up the spermatocord, this cord right here, and you can see where it goes up to this cord, which would be the ductus deferens, around and through a swelling area here called the ampulla. The ampulla. All right, adjacent to the ampullas will be, on both sides here, will be seminal vesicles, which puts out seminal fluid. It's added to it. Now I'm going to open this up like this so we can see the inner parts. Take this bladder half off, and then we'll follow the path of the sperm. Goes down through this ductus deferens here, and then it goes through goes through an enlargement called the ampulla. Then it passes into this purple gland here, and this is called the prostate gland. Notice also going through the prostate gland is a prostate urethra, which comes from the urinary bladder, which is this. Now, during ejaculation, the sperm and semen then are propelled down to this duct and into the penile duct, or the spongy urethra here, right here. Now there's one other gland here, a little bit hard to see, but right in here, this is called the bulbourethral gland. Bulbourethral gland. Now before a male ejaculates, this gland puts out pure semen as a lubricant for the urethra here. Urethra. So this is a third gland that puts out semen. Okay. Now, on the penis here, you can see that you have some layers here. This is the spongy urethra, and this part right in here surrounding it is called the corpus spongiosum. Corpus spongiosum. And the little cavernosus looking stuff up here is called the corpus cavernosa. Corpus cavernosa. Okay, now this is what you're looking at here is a diagram of the testes. The testes are the place where sperm are made, and also a male hormone, testosterone. They're made in these little tubules right here. These are called seminiferous tubules. They're quite coiled up, and if you were to uncoil them, they'd stretch out for about the length of a tennis court. Now they are in lobules here, and they're just simply called lobules, seminiferous lobules. The sperm are made there, and also the testosterone hormone. But the sperm, as they mature, migrate out to this little area right in here. And this is known as the ret testes. Ret testes. Then after they mature, pretty much at full maturity, they migrate out into this big area right here called the epididymis. The epididymis is broken down into three parts: the head, the body, and the tail. And During ejaculation, the male sends sperm up through this little cord right here called the spermatocord, but within the spermatocord will be the ductus deferens. That's exactly where the sperm comes through. Now, in the spermatocord are blood vessels and nerves. Okay, now we're going to do the female model. We start with the ovaries, located right here, this ovary. Ovary is surrounded by finger-like projections known as fimbriae, and they are hooked to a tube here called the fallopian tube or uterine tube, which goes to the uterus here. Okay, and then it's a very thick muscular organ here. The neck of the uterus here is known as the cervix, right in there. And then the vagina, right here. And then we have the labia minora, the labia majora here. Now the clitoris is located right here. Very hard to see, but it's located right here, the clitoris. The clitoris is a type of erectile tissue. All right, this is a diagram here of the female, and showing here as the just above the pubic bone will be an area known as the mons pubis. Mons pubis. And below that, this whole area that you see here, it would be known as the vulva. Vulva. And within the vulva, you have two labia, which means lips, labia majora, which are the larger ones, and then the smaller inner lips would be known as labia minora. Then located at the upper part here, you see the clitoris, and then the clitoris also branches and goes down both sides of the labia majora in that area. Now, covering the clitoris would be the clitoral hood, which is sometimes called the prepuce of the clitoris. Prepuce of the clitoris. Just below that, between the vagina and the clitoris, will be a little orifice called the external urethral orifice, where urine comes out. And then we have the vagina, which is the birth canal. Now we're going to look at the female mammary glands. Mammary glands are really modified sweat glands, embryonically speaking. Okay. On the inside here we have the lobules here where the milk is actually made. We'll go over that in a little bit more detail. But just the parts here is the breast tissue, and then we have a little darkened area around the nipple. This is called the nipple. The darkened area is the areolar. In this diagram, we're going to look at the inside of the breast tissue. Notice that the breast tissue are connected to the pectoralis major muscle. Okay. Now inside the breast will you'll see a lot of yellow looking tissue there known as adipose tissue, fat tissue. Then you'll notice that that a little bit darker area are called lobes. It's where the milk is actually made. And this milk production is mediated by hormones, of course. Now, once the milk is made, it travels down through the little ducts called lactiferous ducts. And they feed into a little enlarged area called the sinus, lactiferous sinus, and then into the nipple. Okay. Now, this next model shows the overall urogenital system, or the reproductive system of the female. We start with the ovary here. This is all the ovary. And these little yellow things in here are known as follicles. Follicles. And this shows where a follicle has erupted after the 14th day, approximately, known as ovulation. And these are fimbriae, the finger-like projections that help pick up the secondary oocyte or egg. And then the egg moves up here through the fallopian tube or uterine tube. And if sperm are present, then fertilization will occur here. This is called the upper 2/3 of the fallopian tube. In other words, fertilization will occur about right here. And once that occurs, then this becomes a zygote. And then it travels down the fallopian tube or uterine tube into the uterus. And that takes about 4 to 5 days. Now, this particular model shows the vagina here with sperm. Sperm are usually deposited in the vagina. And then they make their way through the cervix. There's a plug in the cervix here, which they have to swim through, and it's very, very difficult to get through. Most of them don't get through there. And then they go into the uterus. Now, this uterus is divided into 3 layers here. This thick layer right here, which is engorged with blood vessels, is called the endometrium. And this is the myometrium. And then the outer layer here is the perimetrium. And the egg will, fertilized egg or zygote will now implant in the uterus. Now, this other model, part of the model, shows implantation. This is where implantation will occur. And remember, this is a secondary oocyte implanting into the lining of the endometrial lining. Now, also this will form a placenta, which will then give out that hormone called HCG, which will help to maintain the quietness of the uterus. If the uterus were to twitch or move violently, then it could expel this, and you have an abortion. Okay, now this also shows where after the ovulation occurs, you form this little yellow thing here called the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum, which you remember puts out progesterone. So what you should remember about the ovary is that the ovary takes in 2 hormones, FSH and LH, and it produces 2 hormones, estrogen and progesterone. Okay. All right, looking at the section here of the functional ovary, female ovary, we have hormones coming from the brain that stimulates the production of material from the ovary. The first hormone that comes down will be known as FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. And it stimulates these follicles here to start developing. And you can see them right here, primary follicles. They start under the influence of FSH, they start developing. And it takes several days for them to develop. And as they develop, they also produce a hormone that prepares the female for pregnancy. And this hormone is called estrogen. It prepares everything. It prepares the uterus, the breast tissue, everything for possible pregnancy. Then after about the 14th day of development, the secondary oocyte or primary oocyte turns into a secondary oocyte here, and it then emerges out of the ovary. This process is called ovulation. And it's in a lot of doctors and people just call that an egg, but it's really a secondary oocyte. Okay. Now, after a few hours, actually, this kind of turns into, think of it turning into a yellow-looking thing here called a corpus luteum. The word luteum means yellow. But it does that under the influence of a second hormone from the brain, and this hormone is called the luteinizing hormone, or LH. This comes from the anterior pituitary. And it causes the corpus luteum here to develop and produce another hormone called progesterone. And progesterone maintains the uterus. It keeps the uterus very quiet so it won't twitch or expel any of its contents throughout the. It does that throughout the all 3 trimesters. In addition to the progesterone, another hormone is produced by the placenta. Once the egg is implanted, the placenta puts out another hormone called HCG, human chorionic gonadotrophic hormone. And this helps to maintain the quietness of the uterus for the last trimester. Okay, now this particular model shows the fetus developing in the uterus, and you need to know these little parts that you see here. First of all, this would be the umbilical cord right in here. This part right there hooks into the baby right here. And then this will be the placenta right in here. And then this little reddish area that you see around, all the way around here, will be the endometrium. And then this pinkish, thick pinkish part right here will be the myometrium. This little light, very light little pink lining inside of here will be the amnion. The amnion. Of course, the baby is developing in the amniotic cavity. Okay, this of course would be the cervix right here. Now we're going to look at the embryonic development stages. The model that we have here first shows after fertilization. This shows the zygote. This will be known as a zygote. And then it divides into 2, then 4, 8, and so on until it gets to be a ball of cells. And this little ball of cells is called a morula. And then it starts hollowing out and developing a little bit more, and it becomes known as an early blastocyst. Early blastocyst kind of hollows out in here. And then it becomes what is known as a mid-blastocyst and matures even more. And this little reddish part right here is starting the area where the embryo will actually be forming. And this yellow stuff here is known as the inner cell mass. And then it matures more into the late blastocyst. And you can see the inner cell mass here. Okay. What you see here is a model of the blastocyst. Now, within this model will be this little yellow part right here, and this is known as the amnion, which is the amniotic cavity inside it. Be filled with fluid. That's where the embryo will form, right in here in the amniotic sac. And then this little reddish part right here is known as the yolk sac. The little part down in here is called the allantois. The allantois will grow out and start the development of the placenta. Other parts here will be the carrion, which is this part out here, the carrion. And then these little projections here from the carrion will be known as the chorionic villus. Chorionic villus. Now we look at a model that'll be a little bit further developed here. And notice that the villus are now, the villi are now, they're numerous, and they're pointing more towards the uterus of the female, the endometrium. And here, her blood vessels will grow down in between these villi and furnish nutrients to the blood system of the fetus. Now, notice that the yolk sac has reduced quite a bit, and now the embryo, which is developing inside this amnion here, is in yellow, looking part here. This will be the embryo in the amniotic cavity. In this diagram, we are looking at the functional part of spermatogenesis, the making of sperm. And notice here that you have the spermatocyte, primary spermatocyte, which is 2N condition, having 2 times 23 chromosomes. And then it divides, and this division is called meiosis. And it divides. First division produces a secondary spermatocyte, which is half the number of chromosomes, just 23, random half. And then in the next division of meiosis, we produce spermatotids, which then mature into functional sperm. All right, now this is the female meiotic division of meiosis. We, of course, start out much the same sort as the male, except you have a primary oocyte, 2N condition, that is, twice the number of chromosomes, which would be 23 pair. Then when it divides into the first division, it then becomes the secondary oocyte. And there it stays that way until sperm meet it. When sperm initiate contact with the secondary oocyte, then it completes the meiotic division and produces an egg, which is, of course, N, half the number. Now, the other 3 that would be produced turns into polar bodies. And only one becomes an ovum, which will be the egg.